The MLP Drawing School panel. We will be starting 2 minutes early because we can.
Thank you. We have nothing else to talk about.
Yeah. I am one of your hosts. My name is View, aka Viwrastupr. And
are we gonna go like repeat? All right, whatever. I'm Bob Dude Zero. I draw a lot of Sweetie Belle. That's basically like what I do. So.
I'm Wandering Dragon. First time here. On to Jin.
Oh, hey. I'm Junior Anda. It's also my first time here, so hi, everyone.
All right, I am Kyperia, and I draw ponies. That was a surprise.
Scandalous. I'm Grenadder. I don't draw ponies. Wait. yes, I do.
all right, we are going to start this draw panel with the basics. Basically, we're going to go over what you need to do. And
if you have never drawn a pony in your life, you will be able to at the end of this panel.
If you listen.
If you listen.
all right,
Or your money
first
back.
things first, we're
Or
going
if you
to go
bribe
over
us.
some of
We
the
do
basics
accept
of drawing.
bribes to do drawings.
Some of the basics of drawing, like references, undersketching, comparing to references, how to use them, anatomy, proportions, and volumes. Once we've gone over this kind of basic thing, we're going to open the floor to questions. Feel free to raise your hand for a question at any time, but after we do the initial part, we'll do questions, kind of how do I draw this, how do I work with this, I have this problem, stuff like that.
This is a very beginner-based panel, so if you have more advanced questions on like, yo, Bob Dude, how do you do such sick shading? Well, we can tell you in the question and answer panel, or part of the thing, after we handle the basic stuff. But first, how about you go ahead and get us started?
All right. First things first, we want to go with references. So I have pulled up here a nice little reference. And we have a pair of ponies. Yay. Now, when you're first drawing, whenever you're drawing, it doesn't matter if it's first or if you've been doing it for a long time or if you haven't been doing it very long at all. You always want to have a reference. You want to have something you can compare to for anatomy, for proportions, for how things fit together. Everybody uses references.
A lot of people think like references are like cheating because you're like looking at the thing you're supposed to draw, but it's not. It is cornerstone material stuff. I guess you could. I mean, tracing is questionable, but references are definitely something everyone should use.
You have a reference and you look at it and it tells you everything about proportions, everything about anatomy, all these little answers for the questions you may have. Now, somebody else want to talk about the undersketch and how that is important while I draw an undersketch?
Well, you actually, hold on, why don't you go bring up those all the different forms of undersketching that we can do. So every artist does it a little bit different. But undersketching is, it's pretty critical to a lot of people. You're basically putting down the shapes that you're going to use as your guide as you're moving on. So things become immensely easier when you're doing any kind of art.
This would be my undersketch. It is very ugly, it is very messy, it is very quick.
But once you have something down, things become immensely easier to follow because once you can see something, it's way easier to just like continue working on it. So
you're making a mess, you're making something chaotic, something that's easy for you to correct so you don't have to move the entire face around when you realize the neck is a little long.
Essentially, it's the whole frame of the pony. You're just trying to get the core concept down of what you want it to look like. Not anything very specific. It's very general, very rough. It should not be a clean sketch. You do not start clean.
Yes, very rough.
Clean up later.
Here, just some examples of the panelists' different ways of putting together a sketch and how it comes together. Some do a little bit of joints and anatomy underneath. Some just go straight for the outline. Some are very thick lines. Some are very thin. Everybody has their own kind of way, and it's important to try different things out and see what works for you and your process.
Some people even do their strokes completely different than others. Like I still do the scratching that I do traditionally.
It's inefficient.
A lot of people like View here like to yell at me for not just swooshing, just keep on never lifting your pencil.
Yes.
So. But everyone does it a little bit differently. Whatever's most comfortable for you is the one that you should be using. So if you prefer hatching, even if it's less efficient, then you should totally do it. Like whatever gets you to the end result and you enjoy it, then go ahead and take it.
That's one of the important things about art is to find a process that you enjoy, but it's also flexible. You can't just stick with the same thing forever and ever and ever, else you won't really improve.
Don't be afraid to try something new. I tried swooshing. I didn't like it.
Well, at least you tried it.
I tried it though. I did.
All right, why don't we move on to comparing to a reference. Right now I am drawing this little apple bloom, and we'll see that this kind of angle from the tip of the ear to the back of the rump is like that. Now, and we come back to here and we compare and we say, okay, that's kind of correct, but let's go from the tip of the muzzle to the front of the chest, and that's a little more steep in ours than the reference, so we can move the chest forward or move the muzzle back. And this kind of comparing helps you to understand the reference a little better and correct yourself for when you make something that's a little off, and it'll always be a little off.
Yeah. No, this is something you should not be afraid of doing is don't be afraid to just make little guidelines over the references. As you saw what View did there, those little lines from the top of the ear to the back, from the muzzle to the chest, those are perfectly fine. Use those.
Yeah, you
It's
can
a
edit
way
the
to
reference
compare
as much as you want.
angles. It's not a trace in that I'm not just taking something and putting it directly on my piece. That's not its intention. All right. Shall we move on to anatomy and proportion, or does
Well,
anybody
how
have
about we
anything
talk
more
about how
on?
you can compare anatomy and proportion to a reference?
That's a good idea.
If you guys notice all the little circles that Viwrastupr's drawing, specifically the ones for the chest, the flank, the head, that kind of thing, these are what I like to affectionately just call undersketch circles. The size of these undersketch circles are going to be what inevitably make up your proportions. So if your chest circle is too big, you're going to have too big of a chest. Go figure. So you're going to want to, another great aspect of undersketching is that you can do these super rough and figure out whether or not like your chest is going to be too big. You can see that because it's already there. You know, you already wrote that down. You can immediately correct it.
You don't have to redraw the entire
You don't have to redraw the whole thing. Saves you a lot of time, let me tell you. But you can do that with everything. As far as comparing to references go, just compare your undersketch to it, and then when you know that you've got things, you know, at least looking genuinely correct, and it doesn't need to be perfect, by the way. When I say genuinely correct, I mean like, yeah, this could pass. Like,
This
Yeah,
is
it
a
doesn't
pony.
have to be 100% precise. It has to be believable. That's the difference.
don't get too focused on accuracy. You know, you're not going to have any fun if you're just like, oh, this is like
This
a
is
half a
2%
millimeter
off.
off. This
No, no,
sucks.
it's 2%.
Your sketches aren't meant to be perfect.
Yeah.
You have time to work, clean them up, really build them up. If you shoot for perfect on the first try, you're going to hate your art, you're going to hate how it's coming out, and give up.
And references help teach you these proportions, these anatomy. By working from something that's already there, you figure out how things are kind of put together, what common joints are used, what common proportions are used.
And if you're the kind that's the hands-on learner, let me tell you, this is your kind of thing. Like, just trial and erroring this kind of thing where you're just figuring out exactly where everything goes and how big everything should be in comparison to everything else. And I mean everything, like how big that ear should be compared
Look
to
how
the
long
eye.
this leg
like,
is in comparison to the others. It's
Yeah,
just-
but you know, you can do it a little rough as long as you
Just
make it
have fun
happen.
with
You
it.
know.
All right. Do we want to go into volume, or do we want to talk a little more about references?
Dude,
Or
I love,
references.
I love volumes. I gotta tell you.
Well, I said references, so.
So why don't you talk about references?
I'll say references are your best friends. If you pick up just one reference, try to imitate it, that's perfectly fine when you're getting started. But if you have an idea, a complex pose, a unique angle on a pony, don't be afraid to grab multiple references to try and get as much as you can out of them.
Yeah, this is me just copying the reference, but there's more you can do with a reference than just doing the exact same thing. You can use it as a guide for proportions. So we look here at Apple Bloom's head, and it's this really big head, and we compare it to the size of the body, and it's
so
about the
adorable.
same
Oh my
height.
God, it's so cute.
It's just whoosh. So when we're drawing a pony from the front, we can do the same thing. We can have this giant head, tiny little neck, and
Big
have the
old
rest of
body.
it small. It tells us the answer for how big is this in comparison to that. And that is what proportions are, is a comparison thing. A leg can be any size until you attach it to a body, and then it has to be the right size for that body. So when you're correcting for proportions and for anatomy, it's comparing what you have drawn to what else you are drawing. And we see the eyes here are very large for the head as well, so we can draw some very large eyes. And even though we're drawing from the front, we're using the reference to help us, to guide us with anatomy, to guide us with proportions. And so it's a different piece entirely. We don't have to worry about the fact that we're copying the reference, because we're not copying the reference. We're making something new. But we're using it as a guide, and it's very helpful.
And when you're searching up references, you don't need to find something like perfect to what you're, like exactly what you're trying to draw. Like, if you wanted exactly what View's doing right now, like he's just got a picture of Apple Bloom. Like, if you have that reference, then you can probably visualize how she would be rotated. So just, you know, make it happen. Right?
And it takes time to learn how things rotate and how things fit together, and that's another thing about the anatomy and the proportions.
Yeah.
It takes study, a little bit of study. You have to figure out, okay, where are the joints? And it helps to look at real horses for this, but let's zoom in on Apple Bloom a little bit. And we can see that we've got joints in this thing. We've got a spine, and it connects back here to the pelvis, and there's a bit of a knee, and it's very tall and extended right now because she's trying to emphasize. Comes back here to the hoof. And it's important to understand how all these joints are. Now, in a real horse, this particular joint is a lot higher, but since this is My Little Pony, they're a little more human. We'll put it a little further down.
And also, what he's doing right now is a very, very underused trick. Just drawing over your reference and figuring things out. Like, if you do this on another, if you're doing digital at least, and you do this on another layer, then you can get rid of, that, the reference layer, and like, oh, hey, look, there's all of my measurements. Like,
yeah, you don't draw over that again then, but this is a drawing sheet. This is not something to trace or anything like that. That would be silly. References are a guide. They are not a way to be specific. You can see how big the ear is here. You can see that if we just look at it a little closer, the outside of the ear is much, much taller than the inside. And so we get this kind of lemon with a little bit cut out shape. All right, are we ready to open for questions, or do we want to go over volumes?
yeah, we should talk about volumes because we got some time.
All right, let's go.
Volumes are pretty cool things. I don't know if you guys knew this, but volumes are pretty cool.
Okay, so when drawing, you're drawing on a flat piece of paper, but you want to make things seem like they're round. So instead of drawing just a circle, you draw a sphere. Ooh.
Yeah.
And you do this with contour lines. So there are those lines that in a computer drawing that go around the object on the inside of it. So we do this, and it gives it a little bit of 3D look, and it helps us place things so they're a little more three-dimensional. And it gives a little bit more believability to your piece and a little bit more roundness. And it's nice and happy.
It adds some nice depth. It gives the characters a more 3D look.
I
And stops them from being flat, boring, and kind of lifeless. Once you start to figure out volumes, you will eventually be able to get these more lifelike drawings.
And it helps not just for the face, but you get a cylinder for the hoofs, and so it comes out at the bottom here. And so even on the show, it comes out just a little bit, just to give that little bit of cylinder to it instead of just a flat rectangle.
Zoom in on one of their hoofs to show that. Yeah.
So it comes out just a little bit.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of cylinder there. I've lived by this for a long time. I'm a firm believer that the difference between beginner art and intermediate art is volumes. When something pops off the page, that's when something becomes impressive. Like that's when you as an artist can be like, yo, I did that. You know? Like if it has that little bit of volume pop, that's what really makes people like notice
it also
that.
helps to have a front and a back to things. So we have an example here of Twilight's hair. We have the front area that I'm going to shade here, and we have the back area, which
Oh, hey, by the way,
is underneath. So you have an underneath area.
every single thing has a volume. Every single thing. A sheet of
Even-
paper is going to still have that
little bit
small
of
little
volume.
bit of depth right here. So if there's light like coming at like this side of a piece of paper, you're gonna see that. You know, there's still depth to it. There's still depth to a
Paper-
piece of lint floating in the air. You have to.
It's going to be round. You're drawing on something that is very flat, so you have to kind of make sure that what you're drawing doesn't come across as just as flat. Otherwise, you lose a lot of believability.
And if this doesn't sound easy, you're right. It's not that easy. This is the kind of thing that takes a lot of practice.
It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of looking at what your reference is doing. Like the bow here, we have the outside and the inside of it, so it gives it a little more volume and a little more roundness.
Just even sitting down, taking the time to draw 6 circles and then putting the lines on it to try and give them that 3D look, it just keep doing that over and over again, it really just starts to build up and you start to get more confident in your ability to improve your volumes.
And when you're sketching, you don't have to worry about drawing a perfect circle. Yes, great artists draw perfect circles, but they've been doing it for years and years and years. When you're just starting out, you don't have to worry about it. Even I don't worry about it, because as you work on a drawing, you'll refine it and it'll get better. Starting out, it shouldn't be perfect. If you worry about something being perfect when you're just starting out, it'll take you forever to start because you're trying to finish as you start. You're trying to jump the 100-meter race instead of run it.
Never let your head get ahead of your hand.
Have we completely lost everybody now? Okay.
Well, why don't we open
This
the
is
floor
what
up
we
to
call
questions?
thinning the herd.
I don't know, we followed a pretty good structure.
Let's open the floor up to questions. So can we have our staff member raise their hand? Okay, this person will come to you if you raise your hand and we point at you. So raise the hands for questions now if there are any. All right,
That fly is.
we got one over there in the front. Right in front.
Right in front of me.
What program are you using?
I am using Paint Tool Sci. I really enjoy Paint Tool Sci.
He's using my paint tool.
There's
as
Paint
the
Tool
guy.
Sci, Photoshop, and
That's a little
everything
better.
else is just kind of less.
Hey,
There-
don't
there's
forget
been-
Fire Alpaca.
There are plenty of programs out there to use. Some are better for some things than others. I really enjoy Paint Tool Sci for its painterly abilities and stabilizer, which allows you to do more smooth lines more intuitively.
God, if Photoshop had a stabilizer.
Well,
So
you can
much
you can
happier.
purchase Photoshop stabilizer.
The stabilizer
Anyway.
tool is your best friend in Paint Tool Sci because for a lot of people, if you start out on a new tablet and you're very slowly drawing a line, you'll see it'll get wavy and it'll really discourage you. Most people use stabilizer. I use stabilizer definitely,
I keep mine on like
and
7.
I can start drawing lines, and it's not there to draw the line for me. It's just there to sort of.
It's just a tool
help.
to use. Like with traditional media, you may lean in a little more to the paper. You may use a paper with a greater tooth, meaning it's a little harder.
And when you're doing digital stuff, do not be afraid to like use every single tool that is available to you. Because if you're not, then you're only limiting yourself. Like, Funkman and Bishy are always, they used to always yell at me for using so many overlay layers. But overlay layers are fantastic.
They're fun,
So-
and everybody has their own way of approaching art. Now, there
boy
are
Little Funkman?
professional ways to approach art and ways to do things a little faster. And as you study, you'll see what you prioritize. Do you prioritize being a little more professional and doing a little more?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? You know what might be good to talk about?
What's that?
Before another question, because we always get asked about how styles develop.
Styles develop after you spend lots of time trying to understand the basics.
Yeah.
You form your own way of doing it, and eventually your own style will come out. You don't
But
try to
it's
force
not
it.
permanent. That's one of those things that you can't rely on something that you can't help and call it a style. Well, no, you can't break a rule and call it a style. No, you work with it. You work with what you can do, and you try to learn. And you may have a way that you prefer that everybody else may not like.
And try and learn the fundamentals before you start trying to develop a style. Because a lot of people are like, they're super eager, you know, like they just want to be Viwrastupr over here with their super cool style, you know, like, oh, I'm so special, you know. And so they totally jump the gun. Hey, dude, don't sell yourself short, all right? Now then. So they'll jump the gun on that, and they won't know their anatomy or their proportions as well as they really should before they're starting to do that kind of thing. Eventually, you just kind of pick things up from other artists. Like, I started drawing like a cheek on like everything because of Arab Rick. So,
And you don't just pick it up from other artists. You look at the other artists, you study the other artists, you maybe draw something of theirs a couple times and see what you can learn from it.
And if there's something you like if you like something that someone else does, just start to work it into what you do. Bob likes cheeks from Arabic. I like the ears on I'm going to say her name wrong. Antilander?
Anti-Ander.
Anti-Ander's art. They do amazing, spectacular art that really pops out of the page, but I think it's always the ears that gets me.
All right, next question.
Yeah, good. Literally anyone, just pick someone.
Let's do the middle now. Red shirt, striped.
Now, what's the difference between drawing on a computer, on a tablet, and actually drawing on paper?
There are quite a few differences, but as far as process goes, you're still trying to use references. You're still trying to go from general to specific. For a computer, I may work in black for my sketch layer and then use an opacity layer to make that a lot lighter. For sketching, I may just use a lighter pencil instead.
It's essentially the tools you have available to do the similar
You have to
processes.
recognize the limitations of your tools. With a lot of traditional media with a pencil and paper, you have to go from light to dark. You have to slowly approach a dark. With something more digital, you can kind of get away with going dark to light. So
It's
fact, dark
it's
to light
sort
is a
of
good idea.
It's sort of like a comparison. If, for example, you're working with clay and you make a mistake, it's very easy. It's a different way you have to approach it to fix it. Versus if you're making a vase, but if you're making a vase out of a block of stone, that's a completely different process. But you're still making a vase.
So it's the same fundamentals, but it changes your process a little bit.
I don't understand.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's get one from that side of the room. All right. Questions? No one? Yes?
Yeah.
What makes a bad reference, or are there things that would make a reference undesirable for use?
If it's the official Hasbro vectors, don't use those. Those are horrible.
The
That's
official,
rule number one.
the official Hasbro vectors are based off of sketches from Lauren Faust, which were wonderful sketches, but the vector process, whoever did it was underpaid. And it's very sad because the volumes were kind of ruined. What makes a bad reference is bad anatomy, basically. The show is a great, wonderful resource for references, but every once in a while they'll have a leg that's the size of a hand, and then another leg that's the size of, 2 stories tall.
If it's good art, it'll make a good reference.
Yeah, if you like the art, use it as
You
a
can
reference.
use it as a reference.
You might pick up something for your style later on, right?
The most important reference is real life. Well, that doesn't really apply to My Little Pony because it's not real life. You can still use horses and whatnot for joints, anatomy, and whatever you want to add. There's an artist called Earthsong in the vendor hall who does wonderful, more horse-like ponies, and she learned from real life.
But essentially, a bad reference is if you can look at it and you feel like something just is wrong with it, something's a little broken, that should be a red flag for you. It's like, okay, probably shouldn't use this one. Like, the hoofs are extended pretty far out from the body, and one is just really elongated. If you notice that right away, best not to use it.
Use art you enjoy. Figure out what you enjoy and what works. The best reference to use, of course, would be the real life, followed by the show, followed by artists. So,
Yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Next one.
next question. Middle.
On the
I'm
right
just gonna
side.
go back and forth and back and forth.
Yes.
I don't see why not. That doesn't seem like a bad idea.
That would give the middle a little bit
But the
extra.
middle's twice as big, so.
Can you speak to a little bit about, you talk about using references for drawing. A lot of people want to do OCs. Can you talk about the challenges as an artist of taking a pony reference, but also using the characteristics of a human reference and putting those anthropomorphic qualities and basically converging the two together to actually draw a pony that has human characteristics of a subject?
This one's actually not too difficult. The main problem is hair. That's the biggest thing I see people have trouble with.
I mean, that's the
human
only
hair,
difference.
the way it does not fit on a pony. A pony has a very mohawk-like mane. It comes straight out the top, unless it's like Twilight, which is just really odd. I don't see how
it still does. It just
It's
flips.
it's a
Yeah,
wave.
it
It's a
just
surf
comes
wave.
down.
Yeah.
I would have,
It's like my hair. You know?
I
It's
half
just-
expect to see Discord come like surfing out of a tube.
Yeah.
But then on humans, well, we're human. You can look at a mirror, see how your hair runs. But typically, what you want to do is focus on the main features, like the core concept of the hair. If someone is,
You want to do this when anthropomorphizing anything or when making it more pony-like. You take the main features of it. Like, say if I were to draw a cloud strife pony, I would take the very spiky hair and put that in. I would make sure to put in the giant shoulder pauldron on one side, so it's got this spiky thing, and then the big sword over here. And so you take the main parts
now if someone,
and integrate it with what a pony already is.
or another example, if someone has like really long curly hair, you can have it coming up through the front, push to the back, like the tree hugger character, but just with curls. It's just different ways to interpret it, but you want to have that mohawk be the center of the hair, and then the front and the back help define it. And the tail, you can have fun with that one. Do whatever you want, really.
Well, you have to keep it consistent with the rest of the design. So if
Exactly.
it's spiky, do spiky. If it's curly, do curly. If it's kind of more rounded hair, do more rounded tail. Just
Now, if
same
there's a
kind of thing.
beard on the OC, just draw a beard. There aren't that many beards on ponies. There are only a few references I can think of.
Hey, dude, the Lebowski ponies, come on.
Yes.
Get your background pony game in check. All right, come on.
All right,
That works too.
how about we move on to the next question? So that side. Pink
So
shirt,
Batman.
kind of back in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a curve that your hand does more naturally. I am left-handed, so this curve is what my hand does more naturally.
Yep.
So if I'm drawing something that's circular, I may want to flip it so I can do the other side of it a little easier.
Hey,
And-
fun fact. You can tell sometimes the handedness of artists by seeing which way they draw a crescent moon.
Or which direction the pony generally faces.
Yep.
If the pony generally faces to the right, it's a left-handed artist, or if it generally faces to the left, it's a right-handed
I'm
artist. This isn't 100% true, but it's kind of the default.
I'm currently drawing an apple bloom facing left, and I'm right-handed, so
Same.
so far there's a 100%.
I drew a bunch of the gems all facing the left, so
And
Yeah.
like the best way to do that, if you're working with traditional, is to just turn the page upside down, because your hand will do that curve upside down. and it
Yes,
Yep.
yes, that works very well.
Rotating the canvas is like
Yeah.
so important.
yeah.
There's another reason why you flip it is because sometimes your eye can see mistakes that you made better when the canvas is flipped because it's a unique view on the canvas.
Yeah, you
sure.
want to change your view of how you see your own work. You're responding to what you make. And you have this kind of bias towards what you make. You have this idea of what it should be rather than what it is. So by flipping it, you get a better understanding of what it actually is.
So essentially, flipping it, you draw it one way. It's like, oh, this is perfect. Flip it, and then you see the abomination you have created, and slowly cry yourself to sleep.
All right, let's hit up the next question.
Next, tie-dye. You have been having your hand up for a while.
It's also a sick shirt, so.
A question to each of you. Like Bob Dude said, there's a time where you start looking at your work and thinking, wow, I'm impressed by that. So from the time you started drawing ponies, how long was it before each of you was kind of impressed by your own work?
I'm not.
Do we want?
Always. I am amazing. I don't have that big of an ego.
Well, part of the reason why I say like the difference between beginner and intermediate art is volumes is because volumes was the first thing that made me be like, hey, I can do this. Like, maybe I'm not as trash as I think I am, you know? So.
And then we remind you.
Yeah.
I am that mean, though.
I probably started about 2 years ago now, just like actually trying to learn how to draw ponies. For me, just a month ago, I started actually liking what I was really producing. There's always that finish something, it looks amazing. You look at it a month later, you think it looks awful.
Oh God, I know that feel.
Yes.
Does it ever stop?
I go on my DA and I'm like, why do I still have these up?
I keep all my old DA
Of course.
submissions up because I like seeing like my progress.
It-
you know?
it shows a great progression.
I have one of the very first sketches I ever made still up on my DeviantArt, and it's downright embarrassing, but it's still up there.
Yeah, I do the same. It's like,
Same.
I have come far. Yay, I need to do better.
Yeah, it feels good, man.
Okay,
All right, who's
There's
next?
still two more.
Yeah,
Next
there's still
question.
Kai and Jin.
Oh, right.
Wait.
question
I'm
for
sorry,
all of
Jen,
us.
sorry.
so it was.
Lots of
Yeah.
panelists.
Well, I guess I've been drawing, I've been drawing and posting stuff to the internet since 2003, and only like 2 years ago, have I started to really like my stuff. So some people move really fast. I am not one of them. So, you know.
But you're moving. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it all depends on how much time and effort and study and time you put into it. And, you know, you could put in 40 hours and not really care and maybe not make a lot of progress, or you could put in 20 hours of hard back-breaking labor and make a lot of progress but feel awful.
You could do what I do and just draw Sweetie Belle for 24 hours straight, all day, every day.
I don't like having diabetes.
He shares a room with some people, and like you wake up and there's a new Sweetie Belle drawing. We don't know yet.
They're just like, they wake up with them next to their pillows.
They stare at you.
All right, did we get Jen?
Yeah, we got Jen.
So we got it?
Yeah, I don't think I've hit that point of where I like my work yet, because as I learn, I think a lot of our artists do this, is as I learn, my standards increase, and my standards are always in front.
Okay, there's this wonderful graph of
Yeah.
improvement versus your standards, and it goes like this. So, so as you improve, your standards for how far you should be are slightly higher than that always. So you just keep trying to reach where you're supposed to be. And it's a wonderful thing about art because you keep growing and you never stop growing. And there's no finished art. There's no finish line of like, yay, I won. You're like, no, I don't understand purple fully. I know I've been studying it for 20 years. I still don't understand purple perfectly. And that's the wonderful thing about art, is it doesn't finish. You can keep learning, you can keep expressing forever.
But I think it's important that for artists to understand that that's actually exists, and that if you have a goal of meeting your standards, expect to not reach it for a while, but keep on going and keep on improving, and don't get discouraged.
Unless your standards are just way low.
One great tip, there's an artist I watch on YouTube, his name's Jake Parker. He does no ponies, so if that's what you're in for, he doesn't do that. He's an amazing and phenomenal comic artist. He's done stuff for Marvel. One of his biggest tips is if you want to get good at art, you're drawing you're doing sketches. You don't have to do a full finished piece, but you're doing something 1, 2, 3 times a day to a point that a 100-page sketchbook, you're finishing every month and a half. And it's just, sometimes it's just quick sketches, sometimes it's a full thing you're doing. It's just, it's a repetitive thing, and it builds up your skill.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of the reason you're seeing so many like daily art blogs on like Tumblr and stuff is not because they're trying to like
get
be
attention or
super
anything
popular
like that.
and stuff. It's mostly because they're like, man, I really need to draw every day. That's how I'm supposed to get good, isn't it?
Yeah, and it works. The more you draw, the better you'll get at drawing, as long as you keep your attention on improving and you try new things. If you draw the same pony in the same pose every day, I'm sorry, you're not going to learn anything. So.
You'll learn that pose like no other, but that doesn't
You won't be able
help
to
too
draw
much.
ponies. You'll be able to draw a pony.
Yeah. I drew the exact same like bust of like whatever pony I wanted it to be. I mean, 50% of the time it was Sweetie Belle. On like every single like piece of notes I ever did in school, like there was this, you can't go through a page and not see a doodle of a horse that I've done.
Next question, I think we did
Right
over there.
side now.
If there's anyone over there? Yes.
Right in the front.
Yeah.
How do you draw the hind leg for ponies? Because that's difficult.
That's a difficult
Yo,
one.
I have a great tip for this. Can I take that tablet?
No.
If you think you
Can I hook this up? All right, yo.
quickly.
It's going to be a Sweetie Belle.
Yo, Bob
Change
dude.
places.
Bob dude's on the mic. Let's go. All right, dude. Why did you screw up my SAI so bad? This is awful. It's called
Psi.
Say psi.
What
Can't
does
even
it stand for?
say
Does
psi.
it stand for anything?
There you go.
SAI. Okay, so here's the thing about back legs, right? If you're, they're kind of different. What with the whole, volume thing, like I was just saying. So if you have an undersketch circle, right, for the flank at least. So let's say that's my flank. Like there's a chest like up here or something. I don't know. I'll draw it in just for the sake of it. Now, if we have a flank here, and it's facing like that direction. I like to do these guidelines just to help me figure out where all my joints are and stuff like that. Then we have the thigh like right here, right? The same way the shoulders are going to be like right here. Now, in order to draw a thigh, which seems to be what a lot of people have the most trouble with, I like to draw an extra shape, like an extra little undersketch shape. So these might be circles, but I like to draw a little egg as a part of my thigh.
I thought you drew bubbles.
Either or, it doesn't matter. But so I'll draw this little egg shape like this. kind of obtuse, like kind of thins out near the bottom, you know, just a little
An
egg over there.
upside down egg.
Yep. And then I can even give, if I wanted to, I can even give that thing guidelines if I'm really really into it. I don't know. And from there, all you have to do is just follow the joint, which is down, back, and then down, and then you just kind of add it on right there, you know.
That is one way, yes.
Yep.
There are many ways to art, and this is one. Try it out, and then try something else.
Fun fact, the show usually doesn't actually show this part of the thigh on the back leg. They usually just straight up skip it and just have it there, so.
Yes.
Or they just stick to the bottom part underneath that egg.
Yep.
And have it cut off in a very odd fashion.
So does that help? Is there anything else I can get you for?
I'd like to say something on this.
Yeah, sure, go for it, dude.
Well,
And we're switching again.
Yeah, it's
Change places.
We need music for that.
so one of the things I like to do to remind people for back legs is that they have a habit of kicking back. So you have the joint here that comes from the pelvis out forward and the knee. And the knee is kind of hidden in the rump area. It's not really something that's visible. It's something that works, but we don't see it a lot. We see a lot more of this little pokey part in the back of the leg. Something to keep in mind, though, is that back legs kick back. So where this joint is will be further forward than where the hoof is. We'll have this kind of backwards angle. And this gives the ponies a lot of stability. It separates them from real horses a bit, but it makes them look a little more interesting. It gives them a little bit of line of action, and it makes them keep in balance. They feel like they're balanced on something that way. All right, next question.
nice question.
Middle again, or should we?
Is it middle again? Yeah, this dude with the beanie's had his hand up for a long time. Right in the left side.
Right next to
You
Jane.
just skipped the center.
We are doing
We are in the
this.
center.
Wait, what?
Right there, right on the left side of the center.
Yes, you.
correct.
Right next to.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jane.
It's air.
Well, Jane from Firefly.
Are we sure we got this right?
Hello.
just go.
Do you have any tips for portraying fuzziness or fluffiness?
Fuzziness?
We're going to have to turn it over
Okay,
to a
first,
Tons of fluff.
We actually have a resident fluff artist. He's really good at that chest fluff.
Oh, God.
I'm not sure you really need to ask that question, Air.
So, any tips?
Well,
Anyways.
a lot of things about it is don't draw every single hair. That just looks weird after a while. One thing that you can do kind of in a cartoony style is that like joints or like points of intersection, you can kind of draw a little tuft. And that implies fluffiness, which is really great because everything else is simplified. Why not just simplify that? Not so sure about more detailed work because I don't usually do more detailed work. But
I actually have a tip. Don't use hard angles. Always curve them.
Yeah.
Because curves are soft and hard angles are not. So if you want something soft, then you should round that curve out. Let me tell you.
Also, a perfect example of nice fluffy ponies. Who's seen Horsewife? Come on.
Yeah.
Literally
You've seen
everyone
those
on
little
Reddit.
tufts that they draw on that, right?
Yeah.
That is a great simplification of fluffy
You'll
ponies.
note
reference for
how we're talking about other people or how other people do things, and that's one of the great things about art is you can say, I like how that guy does chest fluff. I'm going to take it. I like how that guy does ears. I'm going to take it. Don't
if you
take
take
from
all
the
the
same
fluff, you get
artist
both
every
ponies.
time, or else you're just being a copycat. But you take a little bit from over here, a little bit from over there, and you stir it together, and you make something that's yours. And so you interpret it in your own way. It's less stealing everything and more a little bit of this, a dash of that, and you're making a recipe.
Which quickly can turn into something amazing or
Something
horrifying.
else about fluff to keep in mind is that you want to have your curves down first before you try to add fluff to it. You want to understand where everything is, and then you can come in and say, okay, fluffy here, a little bit of fluff. And it's a lot easier than trying to say, okay, fluff went here, now how do I finish this curve? Now, okay, now a little bit of fluff, how do I finish this curve? No, you already have the curve finished. Don't worry about it.
Is that good?
What's next? On the left side, I believe?
Left side, but
All right.
far left, person in the black and colored shirt.
Yeah.
Up against the wall.
Yes, you.
That's you, dude.
One question, am I talking to you?
Just two quick questions. First off, what kind of tablet would you recommend for drawing?
Wacom, go to Wacom, anything they have.
Arcom is generally the one people like to use. It is a little more expensive. There is monoprice as an alternative. People don't have as much of a complaint about monoprice as opposed to something very generic.
Yeah.
One of the issues with tablets is you want something where the tablet is the sensitive thing, not the pen, because pens break like that. They're just gone.
The tablet well, that's actually my tablet, but my tablet that Veer's using is it's an Intuos 5 Touch, I think. I turned Touch off because all it did was screw with things. But it's a really, really nice tablet. It's got definitely some great specs, and it's one of those kinds where you have to draw like here and then look up at the screen, which has a little bit of a learning curve, a little bit of coordination kind of
But
thing.
it is also wonderful in that you're not covering up your drawing with your hand, so you can always see what you're doing.
But it's also like a cheap way to get like some really, really good sensors in your tablet. So.
Okay, are we going to the middle again?
I think so.
Well, I think you had one more.
Yeah, just one other quick one.
Can I add to your first question? I think a good quality to look for in tablets is that the bigger the drawing area is better. If you get a really cheap tablet that has like a 2-inch by 2-inch drawing pad, then you're not going to do well. You want something a little larger.
An example is with the monoprice. They might be a bit lower quality, but I use one personally. It has a massive drawing area. I think it's like $100 now or $150. I got it secondhand for half price, but I love it because it is a massive drawing area. I don't have to be moving around my page a lot. I can just keep working. So second question.
Yeah.
Okay. So as an artist just starting, and obviously it's going to be extremely rough, you would just recommend to do just based off the show, correct? Not.
I do.
That would be the safest.
The show is the
step.
safest first start.
Yeah.
It does have some problems with anatomy, joints, proportions, because it's animated, and animated things can get away with stuff as long as they're moving. We don't notice it as well.
Yeah.
But once you feel a little comfortable with that, definitely experiment with other areas.
Definitely
other
expand
artists.
into other things. Don't sit on the show forever, but don't ignore it either.
Yeah.
To the middle, I believe.
Right in the middle, I think. The green.
Yeah, this girl in the green.
Right in front of it.
Yeah.
What other softwares do you prefer for drawing?
Softwares like drawing programs?
Yeah.
The drawing programs I usually do are Paint Tool Sci and Adobe Photoshop. Paint Tool Sci is very good for sketching and stuff.
And just to touch on that, for like I use Paint Tool Sci and Photoshop, but I do Overworking Sci, and then when I put it into Photoshop, I'm just doing little minor changes that actually just adds value to it. But all the drawing's been done in Paint Tool Sci.
Okay.
So it varies from artist to artist. There will be people who recommend other programs, and I recommend you listen to them.
Although
see
I
what
will
they have to
recommend-
say, try things out, and there's free programs that you may find you like.
I will recommend one thing though that you should not use, and it's GIMP.
Don't use GIMP.
Don't use GIMP. It's good at what it was built for, but what it was built for is not drawing. So.
Or don't use GIMP, Microsoft Paint, or Microsoft Excel.
Dude, D.A. Murrow is so good.
People have done it.
People do some great like pixel art in Microsoft Excel.
God bless their patience.
But that's a lot of patience, and sometimes you want to wring the person's neck that's next to you.
Another program that I found that's free is called Krita. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Krita.
Krita. It's it's not got as many features as the big guys, but it works pretty well for what it is.
And
I
it's
hear
free.
it's
And it's
I hear it's
free.
really good at doing like traditional looking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have like a sparkle brush and stuff. And, I wish I had a sparkle brush. I would rock that thing. But
Another one I have heard of is called, I believe it's Clip Studio, and a lot of people who do comics. It's got some great little support features for people who like doing comic panels. There's that one texture where you get all the little dots in it.
okay, so basically there are a ton of options, but the two most chosen ones are Paint Tool Sci and Photoshop.
Yes.
So there you go.
Paint Tool Sci, very painterly. Photoshop is more rough.
I think we got to go to the right. Is that what we're doing? Any questions on the right?
One on the right. Anyone?
Anyone?
Hold
There we
it up
go.
high, right in the
here.
third row.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
I see your arm waving.
Turn
if
up
you
for
wave, we'll see it
questions.
quicker.
I can't see past the Sweetie Belle, so.
You're welcome.
No one
You're
can ever see
welcome.
past Sweetie Belle.
Okay, question.
So when is rendering and shading too much? I obviously want to make more depth to it, but when are you doing it too much and then you just
When you're
destroy
new-
an entire angle of it?
in any stage in art, it's easy to get to the point where you're noodling something to death instead of actually working on it. When you're trying to perfect the ear for half an hour, you're working too much on the ear. I'm sorry.
And the same exact thing can be said for rendering, the shading. If you spend hours on one section, you're overworking.
There's a thing I like to call part to part, which is where you're working on an individual part to the point where you're trying to finish it before maybe you've even started the leg. And it's important to keep every part of the drawing at the same stage. So if you're drawing a whole pony, you don't want to have the entire expression and face finished before you know where the legs are. You want to work on everything a little bit at once. And that way, you're not overworking one area or the other. Now, to overwork the whole piece, it happens. It's one of those things. You have to recognize it. You have to be able to pull yourself back from the drawing. You know, take a break, to get some tea, go watch an episode of the show, come back to it and say, you know what, I don't need to work on shading for the next 4 hours. I can just work on it for an hour, be done.
Or another thing you can do is, if it's a big, complicated piece, and put down some base layers. Don't worry too much about shading initially. Then slowly just go back to front or front to back, whichever way you enjoy, and do basic shading at first, each way back, and then just slowly add detail as you go. Don't stick on one section for long at all. Just slowly work your way between all the layers you have, all the sections you have. It'll build everything up, make it look. What did you just do?
I drew a Big Mac saying nope to a pear.
Oh, fair enough. Anyway, but slowly add detail throughout the entire thing. You don't want to be focused like, okay, I'm shading the pony now.
Focus
Next
is good.
the background.
Focusing too much on one area can be very negative.
I should know. I do that all the time.
All right, questions right in front.
In the middle.
Sorry for being on the phone.
No worries.
I didn't hear anything, so you're fine.
All right. So, what do you recommend for kids who, like her, who goes through like 500 sheets of paper in a matter of weeks? Should a child move to one of those smart tab thingies? Or?
Tablets are digital is wonderful in that once you've bought the program, it's over. So you don't have to buy anything else. You have the tablet, you have the program, you can just work in that for years and years and years, and it's great. And you don't have to buy new paper, you don't have to pay for colors or anything like that. I recommend Paint Tool Sci and just a simple Wacom tablet.
The only thing you might have to buy is hard drives if you overuse them.
One of the best things for art is to just art a little bit every day. And if you do that, you will improve. If you focus on a little bit of study, a little bit of reference, you'll improve, and it's wonderful.
And always making sure you're trying something new, or if you're trying to learn a specific thing, you keep working at it, but then you make the point to move on or try something new. Because what you don't want is to spend a year learning how to do the perfect pose, that one pose, and then realize you can only make the main six in that one pose.
That's very sad because
by the way, if you're going through 500 sheets of paper like in a week, like shout outs to you.
One, that's amazing.
Still, that's nice.
You're going to go far, let me tell you.
I do suggest trying out digital, see if it's for you. If not, there are bulk sketchbooks you can get in a few art stores that they sell like 10 packs of them, really cheap.
If not, if you're desperate and don't care about how your work looks in the end, you're more interested in doing it and improving in your art, printer paper can work.
Yeah, I used printer paper for a long time.
But again, that's wasting a lot of paper. I like the sketchbooks for reference later on in your art history. So it's like, oh, that's what I did 2 years ago. God, I was awful.
One tip, if you go with sketchbook route, put a date when you do the thing, because it does let you see.
Yes, it lets you see improve.
It lets you see when you start and finish a book, but then you might have classes, you might be busy with a job. 2 months have gone by, you keep getting long breaks, and you realize it takes a year to finish a book. But you may have been doing stuff on the side. You'll be able to look. This is what I was doing a year ago. This is what I did now.
Well, one of the common themes in art is that art is difficult to do. It's not just difficult to do physically or mentally. It's a psychological issue. It's emotionally draining. And so keeping track of the fact that yesterday I did nothing and today I'm doing better than I did 2 months ago is great. to say that today I may not be doing great things, but I'm better than I was. To compare to yourself is a great thing.
Yeah, but I'm going to bring it back to the question, though.
Oh.
Yes. Now we're on the left side.
I think actually in the back, I can't see, it's blue jackets.
Yeah, we haven't been.
Blue jacket with big ol' ears.
The back deserves our attention.
So we'll do a back row for each section.
When you finally finish like a sketch and like you want to like outline the final product, I always find it like hard to outline like with a shaky hand. How do you guys normally do it?
Oh, I have a very, very shaky hand naturally. I cannot keep it still. In digital programs, that's why I love Paint Tool Side, because it has a stabilizer. Another thing to do to keep away from the shaky hand is to swoosh, and that's just to try to finish your inking in one go with one curve. So let's say I have this nice little ear curve here. I'm just going to try to finish it in one little swoosh, and then swoosh, and then swoosh, and swoosh, and swoosh.
Now,
and so the more you do it, the quicker you'll get at it. It takes practice, it takes experience, but to be able to go whoosh and have that line be where you intended it to be is a wonderful feeling. Yeah. It helps to look at the line as a whole. So you're looking at the end of the line more than where you're starting or where you're going. So you can.
There's also another feature with the stabilizers. If you would be willing to show it, the S settings. It has a slight delay, so it won't record any shaky hand you have, and you can drag it along.
I recommend that one a little less because swooshing is important for more traditional.
Or, hey, you can always do what I did and just not do line work.
You can't ignore line work. You can't ignore line work entirely.
You can skip that step and just go straight to painting if you want to.
Yes.
All right, want to move next question in the middle?
To the middle.
Okay, I saw rainbow hair at the back, first one up.
Sorry, I didn't call you.
What's your best advice for shading?
Advice for shading?
Do it.
Yo, I already.
Traditional or
I'm not
digital?
starting that.
Any.
Okay, hold on. I actually can I handle the first start of this one?
No.
Go ahead.
So never shade in black ever. Do not use the color black to shade. I know it's like you're thinking like, oh yeah, shade black. Like it's not. Hue shades. So.
What is a hue?
A hue is a different color. So yellow, orange, red, all those.
Pink.
So to shade something and have it look, not dull or boring, you're going to want to keep things. You're going to shade them, but you're not going to make them. You're going to make them a little bit darker, but not totally darker. You're actually just going to use a different color. So like if he's doing blue right now, he can shade it in a deeper blue or a purple, and he's going to light it in something that's that's tinted more towards green. Now, if he used all these as the same hue, as in he didn't move that color slider around, it would just look dull and kind of boring because that's just not how light works. So when you're doing shading, always hue shade.
Shade with the colors.
Yeah, shade with the colors.
So
if you can avoid black, avoid black.
One of the things I like to emphasize about shading in digital is dark to light. So you start with something a little darker. So let's say we have Big Mac. We're going to start with a darker red, and then we're going to move it a little more orange and a little more towards his natural coat color. Because it's easier to find where the lights are than to find where the darks are. You cast light on something more than casting a dark. That doesn't make sense, does it? No, it's not as intuitive to cast a dark. So we can find a little easier to make the shapes. It's a little more intuitive. With traditional, you of course generally have to work lighter to darker, so it's about layering and keeping things a little more prepared, a little more cautious.
Now with specifics for ponies, if you're trying to shade the specific shapes of the ponies, is that what you were asking, or the color stuff?
Or the value.
Well, both really.
Yeah. Well, with ponies, you want to try to learn the core shapes of a pony. The head is a sphere, the legs are cylinders, the body is a giant blob.
The body is a kidney.
It's a bean. It's a bean.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
like
kidney
blob.
bean. It's
blob.
But
anyway,
what is a blob?
Hey, I got one more tip for shading, and it's that if you're doing something in an environment then the shades are going to mirror the environment. So if you have a very, very blue environment, you are going to shade in blue.
And guess what's blue? Daylight.
Outside is very blue. So
Inside, it's very yellow.
if you have an outdoor scene, that you're likely going to light it with yellow, and you're likely going to shade it with blue. So rule of thumb for you there.
Okay, next question.
Next
On the
to the
right,
right.
side, your arm just shot up now, but we've been watching your hand up for all the rows. That's impressive.
How do you get past the reference stage when you're doing facial expressions?
You never do.
You don't.
References are something
if
you
you-
use at almost every stage. It's never something you want to get past. You want to get to the point where you feel confident, where you don't think, okay, I need a reference for this. But it's always something you want to have.
It's always something you use. It's not something you always copy from. It's something you use as a guide. One of the most wonderful pictures I've seen about artists are some of the Disney animators when they're working on angry faces. They'll have this mirror in front of them, and they'll just like looking into the mirror, trying to draw their own expression. And they look hilarious because they're trying to exaggerate it. You exaggerate with a cartoon. So it's this person going, and it's incredibly silly. And you want to do it with yourself. You want to have this mirror and just tilt your brows down, look down, and be like, okay, this is very angry. I am very angry. Somebody ate my cookie, and I'm going to find them. And I have a particular set of skills.
For real though, there is going to be a point where you start being more comfortable with specific things. Expression is likely not going to be one of them. Because expressions are extremely dynamic, but like for drawing a pony, for instance, View over here is doing it more or less without a whole lot of references. But it's because we've been doing it so many times.
The more you do something.
Yeah, it starts drilling it in, but expressions are so dynamic that it's likely that you won't ever stop having to need those, or at least having them be immensely helpful for you. But
yeah.
Somebody's
Even now,
not
I will
having fun.
use references whenever I'm trying something new expression, new background, whatever the case may be. I'll always try to find at least a good set of 5 references, just in case I'll need them.
And again, it's not something to copy, it's something to guide. It's something to give you a little more information that you don't have yet. So if you're doing an angry expression, you may want to pull a few sad expressions and say, okay, I'm going to add a little bit of sadness to this, but I'm not going to add it over much. So it's a sad anger. And you can take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and it doesn't have to be 100% of the reference. So the more you understand something without references, the more you can use your references to help you give more depth to what you have.
Next question, in the center.
We got about 5 minutes left, so I guess this will be the last question.
we can fit in another couple.
Yeah. It depends on how complicated the question
We'll
is.
try for 2, definitely this next question, but after 2, let's. Middle, raise your hands.
Right up here.
Please.
Look, this guy's had his hand up.
Yeah. Multiple times.
Please
you get
keep
to go.
it Sweetie Belle themed.
Basically, I've been having problems making my muzzles on my horses really more round, like the show. They come out very square. Do you have any tips for that, other than just obviously practice?
Practice references.
More practice.
Something for muscles to keep in mind is where the physical muscle attaches to the body, to the bones. And so I'm going to use
Muzzle?
muzzles? Oh, never mind. I heard muscles.
Muzzles. I heard muscles too. So,
so I apologize for that.
You two are crazy.
So muzzles, M-U-Z-Z, how they relate to the eyes is important. So for My Little Pony, their eyes are kind of parallel in the middle. And that's wonderful for muzzle placement because the muzzle kind of makes this box on the bottom. And so regardless of where or which direction the pony is facing, the muzzle will always be kind of in
perpendicular.
The eyes. Let's say we have a sideways facing one. We put it a little bit up. It's a little bit above the bottom of the eyes. And it's a very tiny thing.
It's important to note that muzzles are really tiny on ponies. I mean,
let's go back to our reference.
The tinier they are, the cuter they are. That's what I always.
I'm just going to tackle this before we get on another tangent. What you were saying, that you get the boxy muzzles, that very square. One thing I suggest is when those contour lines we've been showing on drawing the face, draw a second very small circle right where the muzzle would be, and use the curves of that as a guide to try and draw that more rounded muzzle.
See, note how tiny the muzzle is in comparison to the eye. It's just this tiny little bump. And here it barely just comes out of the face, just a little bit. And you see that it's covering up that far eye just a little bit. Again, it's in the middle. You have this little thing. And doing this little kind of sketching and seeing where it is on a reference can be helpful, useful. Last question.
Last question, left side. I've chosen a lot of questions. Does anyone else want? Left side. Me, dude.
Anyone on the left?
Our left.
Yeah. Wait, Orange had their hand up, but we gotta give it to the left side. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, that works.
Last one.
So you guys are all about the digital, and that's the way all mediums are going. But there's the purists in all mediums that are still about not that, and I just wanted to know if how you guys feel about everything going completely digital because that's inevitable, or do you think there's something lost by doing that, or do you think it's nothing but good?
Because
it's
I don't
different
think it'll
strokes for
ever be
different
lost.
folks. Some people really enjoy digital. Some people really enjoy having something that's unique in theirs and traditional.
Yeah.
And
I'll do it in moods. Like, traditional art's a lot of fun sometimes, but sometimes I also don't want to be limited by my 4 different flavors of gel pen.
I mean, it's all just a different medium. It's like, oils versus acrylics. It's like just how it looks after, like the product, how the product looks.
And yes, digital is endlessly copying, but you can make prints of any traditional media too, so there isn't too much difference these days.
And to add on to that, like, personally, I've done a lot more in digital now, but I can't bring my desktop everywhere I go, and I still love working in traditional because, for example, today I got to, when I was having downtimes, I could just sit and art, and it was great. I was borrowing someone else's Copics, first time using them, and I got to try out new amazing color things and learn new ways to do color. And I can take those skills I've learned, and if I go to another digital piece, I can take that stuff I've learned. It's interchangeable, and I love both.
Am I the only one that sketches my digital compositions traditionally first?
No.
Yeah, I do it too.
Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people do that.
But
one last question in the middle.
Well, I think we were done.
We're done?
Yeah,
we are out of time.
All right, so
sadly we are out of
you're welcome
time.
to come
Sick,
up
and I
with
just
questions
finished this
afterwards.
sketch.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you all for coming. Let's have a round of applause for the person who ran around for the questions.
Thank you all for staying up to 10:30 to listen to us.
And one last thing, if you have any art questions, the 3 of us here, Bob Dude, View, and myself, are in the vendor hall tomorrow and Sunday.
And the other 3 of us will be wandering around.
Online, you can find us at reddit.com/MLP Drawing School.
r/MLP Drawing School.
Or on DeviantArt, same name.
Oh, hey, by the way, if you have any art that you want critiqued by any of us, feel free to come find us because we will very happily redline or help you with anything.
We are in the vendor hall. We get very, very, very bored, so come on by. Let's talk art.
And definitely check out reddit.com/r/MLP Drawing School, because if you post a link there, hopefully one of us, and there's lots of other people that will look at it, and they'll be able to give you critiques on it.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.